Day 1. Welcome to H-Town. Skyscrapers. Skyline Park. Sami and Susan stepped off the plane into Houston's summer heat like two travelers walking into an open oven. Texas doesn't believe in shade, Sami joked, squinting at the brilliant sun. They arrived at their downtown hotel by noon, checked in, and immediately took their city taxi to the streets. With the upper deck shaded and breezy, they took in views of historic buildings, glass high-rises, and mural-covered walls. Their first stop, Discovery Green, a vibrant downtown park alive with food trucks, yoga groups, and splashing kids.
Susan stood under the massive metal sculpture, Monumento Fantôme, sketchbook in hand. Houston is weirder than I thought, and I love it.
Sami grabbed lemonades from a vendor, and they cooled off under an oak tree, listening to a street guitarist play blues. Later, they explored Buffalo Bayou Park, where turtles sunbathed along the water and cyclists zipped past. They paused at the Cistern, an eerie underground art space that echoed like a cavern.
Sami, impressed by the lights reflected in still water, whispered, "It's like walking through a dream."
That evening, they dined at the Rustic, a Texas-style restaurant with live music, brisket sandwiches, and twinkling string lights. A local duo played folk covers, and Susan couldn't stop dancing in her seat. Day 2. Art, science, and street food surprises. On Day 2, the pair headed to the Museum District, a green haven filled with some of the city's best attractions. First stop, the Houston Museum of Natural Science, where they gawked at towering dinosaur skeletons, dazzling gemstones, and ancient mummies.
I'd fight a velociraptor for one of those geodes, Susan said.
Next, they crossed into the Museum of Fine Arts,
Where Susan found herself sketching Degas dancers, while Sami stood in awe before the massive cloud column sculpture outside often called Houston's Other Beam.
Lunch took them to Montrose, a funky neighborhood of thrift stores and local cafes. They ordered chicken tikka tacos from a food truck and sat under rainbow umbrellas outside.
Just as they finished eating, a gust of wind caught Susan's straw hat and launched it into the air. "My hat!" she yelled, dashing after it.
Sami doubled over laughing as it bounced off a bicycle rack and landed in a hedge. "Houston, 1, hat, 0, he quipped, handing it back.
In the afternoon, they stopped at the Mental Collection, enjoying quiet galleries filled with surrealist art. Then, they wandered through Rothko Chapel, where silence wrapped around them like a blanket. The day ended with a long ride back through town. From the bus, they admired downtown's neon lights and made plans to visit the Space Center next. Day 3. Rockets, retro games, rooftop views. Day 3 began with excitement. They were off to Space Center Houston. An hour's drive from downtown, the center featured actual NASA equipment, scale models of spacecraft, and a real Saturn V rocket lying on its side like a sleeping giant.
Sami, who had grown up obsessed with the moon landing, was in awe. This is better than every space documentary combined.
Susan tried the mission simulator, her arms flailing as the controls spun her around. How do astronauts make this look graceful?
They rode the tram to the NASA Johnson Space Center, seeing real control rooms and astronaut training sites. Back in Houston, they headed to Edo, East Downtown, for the evening. They visited 8th Wonder Brewery, home to retro arcade machines, live graffiti art, and a beer garden shaded by string lights.
Sami crushed Susan in old-school pinball, only for her to get revenge in Street Fighter. "Victory is mine," she declared, holding her fist high.
Later, they caught the sunset from the post-Houston rooftop, where a panoramic city view spread out like a glowing sea of golden glass.
They ate spicy noodles and shared a dessert of fried plantains with cinnamon. "It's official," Sami said. "Houston might be the coolest hot city ever."
Day 4. Gators, gardens, and a giant waterfall. Farewell. On their final day, the friends decided to explore Houston's quieter side, starting with Herman Park. They rented a pedal boat, lazily circling McGovern Lake. They passed under pedestrian bridges, waved at couples walking dogs, and laughed when Sami accidentally splashed water into his face. After drying off, they visited the Houston Zoo, where Susan instantly fell for a baby elephant. Sami, however, was obsessed with the alligators in the swamp exhibit.
Tell me that one's animatronic, Susan said, backing up. Nope, that gator's real and staring into my soul.
For lunch, they headed to Midtown, trying hot fried chicken sandwiches at a locally loved diner. They spent time exploring local bookstores, chatting with owners, and buying gifts for friends back home. Their last stop was the Gerald D. Hines Waterwall, the iconic horseshoe-shaped fountain outside the Galleria. The water thundered down as they walked under the arch, soaked in mist and echoing with laughter. They took one final selfie-drenched, smiling, and glowing with the joy of a city they hadn't expected to fall in love with. Homeward bound, Houston in their hearts. On the flight back to South Dakota, Sami looked over photos on his phone street murals, spacesuits, giant art pieces, and their splashy final moment under the water wall.
Susan leaned her head on the window and said softly, "We did it all, huh?" "Everything except eating a gator tail," Sami replied. "Next time."
They shared a quiet laugh, grateful for the adventure, the heat, the food, the surprises, and most of all, the memories.